Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
They did not profile like a 10-win team. They profiled like 7-win type teams. I can't wait to let 18 to 22-year-olds emotionally ruin me.
I made a call, to Vegas. I said, look, we actually need the paper here.
All right, everyone, welcome again to Bruce and the Bear, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings Sportsbook is the best place to bet touchdowns this season. This week, new customers who bet $5, you get $200 back in bonus bets instantly. Download that DK Sportsbook app. Use the promo code BEARBETS. That's BEARBETS, 2 words when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. All right, Bruce, sitting here in Northwestern, big SEC opener here. SEC, Big Ten opener. It's a big week in the SEC, but we are in Big Ten country. Oregon playing a body clock game in Northwestern. Remember, a couple years back, Stanford got tripped up here as a favorite in a body clock game here. They wound up going to the Rose Bowl, right?
Yeah, Oregon's a little better than them, though, I think. A little better than the Cardinals. So
yes, I think so, too.
But I know you're going to eat good food there, you and the rest of the BNK crew, so I'm jealous of that. Bear, I think we should start in a place that is near and dear to our producer Sully's heart, and that is a top 15 matchup. We got Georgia going into Neyland Stadium. I'm interested to see how the Dogs play here. They haven't looked great. Tennessee's actually looked really good. They obviously thumped Syracuse in the opener. Georgia is expected to get its starting right side of the offensive line back. Gaston and Green, not Gaston Green, but Juan Gaston and Ernest Green.
I was going to say, most Gaston of the first Green is playing offensive line at this age. Yeah, that's you'd have a story there.
If he's playing anywhere at this age, that would be a story. But I think that's going to help immensely to have, especially Ernest Green's got a lot of experience. Juan Gaston's probably the most talented offensive lineman Georgia has. To have them back, I think that you have some really interesting dynamic here with, is this a Gunnar Stockton game where we finally feel like, okay, is he actually as good as the people inside the Georgia program keep telling us he is? I don't know. Bear, are you buying Georgia and Gunnar Stockton to go in there and keep up with the Dogs' dominance in this series?
I am, but mainly because of the Vols of the offense of Tennessee against the Georgia defense, and what Georgia's defense has done in those 4 meetings. The Kirby Heupel matchup at 14 points a game. Last 3 years, 6 red zone trips, 18 sacks in 4 years. Like it has not been pretty, and Georgia's just got the guys to match up on the perimeter with Tennessee's wide receivers. So it's been a problem. Georgia defense has been much better, I think, than I expected. Again, they played Marshall, they played Austin P, but I'm willing to give Stockton and the offense a little bit of a slack, a little bit of a break for the slow start because of the injuries on the offensive line, because of weather delays. It's just been kind of like a stop and start, stop and go type beginning to the season for Georgia. They really haven't had a chance to click and get anywhere, but I am interested to find out. We're going to know a lot more about Gunnar Stockton here. He had the playoff game and the SEC championship game last year that were big games. So clearly he faced some adversity in those games, but I don't think that's going to be anything like going on the road at Neyland Stadium and that place and that crowd and that atmosphere. But like you said, there have been people all off season long claiming that Georgia is going to be better off without Carson Beck and be better off with Gunnar Stockton, a quarterback. Time to see it on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt. Tough place to play. Also, last year, Carson Beck's receivers dropped more passes than any other group in the country.
Yep.
We'll see if this new batch comes in and makes a lot of plays. They came in with a lot of hype. We'll see if now it's time to prove it. In another big prove it game, you got Florida, a touchdown underdog, coming into Baton Rouge. Remember, they beat the Tigers last year, and now they're coming off a game against USF, where the people I talked to said in the warmups, they didn't even look like they were ready to play. They just looked lethargic, like they were just expected to win. Obviously, that didn't happen. LSU kind of cruised past Louisiana Tech last week. Some good news for the Tigers. Braylon Moore, who played really well on the road at Clemson, their terrific center. He's expected to play and start. He's coming off an ankle injury. That's big. Caleb Banks, who's missed a lot of time for Florida. That's the massive defensive tackle on a really good D-line. I think without Braylon Moore and his experience, I think that would be an issue for the Tigers. But they're expected to have him. I think Brian Kelly's going to have these guys ready. And Billy Napier, this is the gauntlet now. 4 brutal games in a row coming off a loss. Man, the buzzers, I think, are going to start circling in Gainesville there.
Well, that's the question I have for you. Like, should Florida lose in Baton Rouge tomorrow or Saturday, depending on when you're listening? Should Florida lose next week in Miami? They're going to be around a touchdown underdog right now. That's the look-ahead line. That would be 1-3. Is that the end right there? If they lose these 2 games?
I don't know if it does them any good to hit the reset button in the middle of the season. It's not like they have a staff where there's a bunch of dudes. You're like, oh, this guy will be an interim and he'll save it. I think the one part why you might make a move like that, if you really decided Billy Napier can't get it done, I think you run the risk of, if he stays on like last year, he never lost the team. They never quit on him and they finished with a flurry. And if he does that again, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now he's, do we just cut bait right now? Do we have a guy in mind that we think will be better? The other little key detail here is around last year at this time, when we were talking a lot about Billy Napier's job security when they were losing to Miami, losing to A&M early, was Scott Strickland, the AD there, was also in some hot water. Well, what changed since then was obviously Napier went on a roll, and then Todd Golden, the basketball coach who Scott Strickland hired, he went out and won a national title. So Strickland's got no worries about his job security. He actually got a contract extension like a couple of weeks ago. So Billy Napier, I don't want to say he's on his own, but he's kind of on his own compared to his AD now. So I think that if I was him, man, they badly need a win this weekend.
By the way, 16-20 in Florida versus FBS teams. So it is an uphill battle. And by the way, are we allowed to bring up the fact that in 12 games against FBS opponents that DJ Lagway has thrown 10 touchdowns and has 10 interceptions? Or are we allowed to mention that, or are we just anointing him as the Heisman winner and future #1 pick?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, one of the coaches who's played him told me he's definitely got like some crazy arm talent, he said, but he's not Lenora Sellers in terms of Lenora Sellers is much faster and sees things better. He said, I think he's just a really inexperienced quarterback who does some wow things, but I think he's, he may not be ready for this kind of run. And Dallas Wilson, who might be the most talented receiver in Florida, he's not going to play. I mean, this feels like everything's going up against the Gators this weekend. It does. And then
I'm
surprised it's not even a bigger number, Bear.
Well, it was 9.5 earlier in the week, and then there's been this buy low feel on the Gators, and it's really weird because if you look at Brian Kelly, in the last 67 games in which he's been favored by 6 points or more, they've lost once. People will say, "Oh, he can't win the big game. He can't win against top opponents." Well, the one thing he really doesn't do is get upset. His teams have also won 42 straight games at home when they've been favored by 6 points or more. So, these are typically the types of games at BK, whether it's been at Notre Dame, whether it's been at LSU, and that play Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge is going to be completely off the hook tomorrow night.
Another place where the crowd, I think, is going to be off the hook is in South Florida, where USF goes to the U. Miami was very impressive in the opener against a good Notre Dame team. Their defensive line dominated. Carson Beck looked good. The receivers look good. Now they get a USF team that's probably been more impressive than anybody, to be honest, in the first 2 weeks. They dominated Boise State, and then they turn around and they take it to UF. But now they got to do it 3 times in a row. And this is probably the toughest test of all. It's probably the most talented team with the most experienced quarterback of the group. And they're a 17.5 point underdog. That is a big number for a team that's ranked number 18. On the plus side, Byrum Brown, who missed most of last year with an injury, is back. He is doing a really good job of taking care of the ball. Has almost 300 straight passes without an interception. He's a dynamic running quarterback. He's 6'3", 235. And honestly, that's the kind of quarterback who has given Miami some problems at times. Now, honestly, it gives everybody problems when you have a big, strong quarterback who can run almost 23 miles per hour. But I don't know, Bear, man. This is tough for them to get up for 3 opponents in a row, especially when the third one is probably the toughest opponent you have.
This feels like, again, I don't want to say beating Florida in the swamp is a bad thing, because it's not. Yeah, Alex Golch is going to get his Power 5 job next year. They immediately go to the front of the line of Group of 5 playoff contenders. But if they were just solely focusing on wanting to sneak in and sneak up on Miami and win the game, all bets are off there, because Miami is on full alert. They have the Canes' full attention. I do want to push back just a little bit, because I think we're maybe giving them a little too much credit for the first 2 weeks. You play Boise in a weather stop and go weird spot. We all knew Boise was going to be down this year, and they're not going to be ranked at the end of the year. I think the only reason they beat Florida is because, like you said, Florida just beat themselves 110 or 120 penalty yards or whatever it was in the game. Lagway wasn't good. They walk through. I don't know. I think this game is an absolute blowout. Last year, Miami put 50 on the board against them, averaged over 9 yards a play, punted once. I think it'll be a little bit different of a feel on Saturday night there. I think between that Miami offensive line wearing South Florida down up front, I think you're going to see a lot of running, and then when safeties come up, that's when Beck is going to hit the receipt Daniels and Malachi for those big plays. I don't think this game is close, and I think the Canes win somewhere along the lines of like 38-10, something like that. I think it's an under-type game. It's the one other thing about USF in their first 2 games this year. Their plays per game have been down quite a bit. Last year, I think they were top 20 or so nationally in plays per game. Now, again, it could just be the opponents that they played and the game circumstances. Their plays are down by about 15, 16 plays a game this year.
All right, Bear, let's get to the walkthrough. We bring in our favorite, Sammy P. Sammy P, you always got gems for us. What do you got this week?
I've been searching Austin Simmons on X more than anybody on this planet, Bruce, I promise you. It's been a weird end of the week. So on Thursday, rumblings came across that Simmons was in a boot at practice. And wise guys don't really wait for confirmation. They bet. So they came in and bet Arkansas plus 7.5 and plus 7. Got down to 6 at Circa. There was buyback there on Ole Miss at 6. And then you start reading about this backup, Trinidad Chambliss, who had 51 touchdowns last year at Ferris State. He's pretty good. However, another wrinkle, Lane Kiffin leaves Austin Simmons off the injury report on Thursday night. The market thinks he's going to play. I had one bookmaker tell me he doesn't believe anything Lane Kiffin says. So we'll find out, I guess, on Saturday how healthy Austin Simmons is.
Do you believe anything that Lane Kiffin says or does?
Actually, yeah, he's like the most honest guy out there in terms of like the media. Look at him. Sorry betters about the field goal. And no one, maybe other than James Franklin, loves our line of work more than Lane. No, we love Lane. We'll see what happens. It's interesting. Like, I'm normally not an over better, guys, but 62 with this total. I mean, what was it? 63, 20, 31 last year, 64, 30, something like that, 90 something points. Not like Bobby Petrino is going to like stop scoring points. This could be a pretty high scoring game, even if Simmons doesn't go, right?
All right, Bear. I know you and I have talked about Georgia, Tennessee before, but let's get Sammy P's thoughts. Sammy P, what do you got?
Tony Miller at the Golden Nugget made it very obvious what he needs. I texted him, what's your biggest concern on Saturday? He responded, go Georgia Bulldogs. They opened this game 6.5. Tennessee catching 6.5. They're down to 3.5 right now. So the Sharps came in, cleaned the big numbers out of the way, but there's been this pile-on of people betting on Tennessee. I guess they don't believe in Gunnar Stockton. Maybe they think Tennessee has the answer at quarterback. We shall see. But the quote here, they're betting Tennessee, and they won't stop. Interesting, huh, Bear?
Sammy, I was going to say, was Tony Miller one of the guys in week 1 with Miami Notre Dame that texted you saying, like, they needed the Canes. I know John Murray did. Did Tony need the Canes badly as well? Because that worked out well. It's interesting because, again, you know how like on the back of those old parlay cards, you used to say like for news information and for news matter only with like the lines. So for news information only, if you go back like week 1, week 2 at BetMGM, John Ewing tweets out those like top 5 ticket counts of the week. Week 1 they went 0-5. Week 2 they went 1-4 with the one win being Illinois, who was aided by the 5 due turnovers. So like they're 1-9 combined in the first 2 weeks, and obviously the biggest ticket count this week is Georgia. Does that concern? It's a little weird, isn't it? That like a big public play like Georgia would be the side that Vegas actually needs.
It is a little surprising for sure. Obviously, BetMGM has a different reach than the Golden Nugget does in Nevada, but I was told by multiple books in Vegas that they took really sharp money on Tennessee, and to get it from 6.5 down to 3.5, you're going to get that Georgia buyback eventually, but they definitely have much bigger liability on the Vols.
Hey, Sammy P, game near where Bear is right now. It's in South Bend. Texas A&M is coming in there. Rematch from last year's opener when Notre Dame went down there and won. Obviously, Notre Dame had the bye week to soak up losing to Bear's alma mater. Do you feel like they're going to be primed to take down Aggie's team looking for revenge?
Well, having the bye certainly helps, right? And I think we're going to learn a lot more about how impressive that performance was by Miami. Miami's a very good football team, but losing to Miami, a top 5 team, is not the worst thing in the world. That said, you got to beat A&M if you want to be a playoff team. We were talking about this on Bear Bets. If you go 10-2 and have losses to Miami and A&M, what's your biggest win? USC, I guess. I don't know that gets them in. But one bettor in Vegas believes in the Irish. He found that lucky charm. He bet $10,000 on the Irish to make the playoff at -130. They're favored in every game the rest of the way going forward.
Well, that's going to be the interesting debate at the end of the year. Like, should they lose? And 10-2, they've been so much talk about focusing on strength of schedule, strength of record, and with 2 close losses against teams that are probably going to be top 15 at the minimum type teams at the end of the year, going 10-2 with Notre Dame, then ripping off 10 straight wins. My guess is they would get in, but Bruce, it's a really interesting way to basically play a Notre Dame money line as a 6.5-point favorite in this game, laying only 130 to make the playoff. That's basically saying it's a kind of a correlated type bet. If they beat A&M, they're going to get in the playoff. So instead of laying whatever the money line is on a 6.5-point favorite, lay about a little bit less at 130 to make the playoff. Basically saying the same thing.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. Like Sammy P was talking about losing at Miami. No shame in that. I think part of the big problem for the Irish, who typically have a really good offensive line, Bain and Mesidor, Miami's bookends, really dominated that game. And you have to wonder also, Notre Dame's defense didn't really tackle that well. And you got a head coach who used to be a linebacker, and Marcus Freeman. You had a bye week. I think talking to some of the staff, as I did actually this morning, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond to that, because now you have a much better running quarterback at Texas A&M, and you have a deep stable of running backs, right? Le'Veon Moss, when he's 100%, people think he's the best running back in the SEC. You got Ruben Owens, you got a bunch of dudes back there. I'm interested to see how Notre Dame responds. I feel really good about what I saw from CJ Carr. Those guys love him. They said part of the challenge with a young quarterback is seeing them to buy in to take shots downfield. There was no worries about him doing that. He was really aggressive. It's almost like now, hey, check it down. We got the best running back in college football. Let's give him some love too. But I feel good about him. I'm just a little curious how they tackle the running game for A&M. All right, guys, let's get to the 2-minute drill. Bear, what do you want to lead us off with?
I know you're probably going to be surprised to hear this, but not everybody on social media agreed with the take that I had earlier in the week when I was going over scheduling this week. We all know that the SEC has the November pre-rivalry game, pre-big game, cupcake week in November. But the Big Ten schedule this week is exactly that. It's the same thing, just at a different point in the year. Big Ten's non-conference games this year. Alabama does play. Wisconsin goes to Alabama. Minnesota goes to Cal. 2 Power 4 games. Here are the other Power 4, the other Big Ten teams, their non-conference opponents this week. Indiana State, New Mexico, Central Michigan, Houston Christian, Towson, Villanova, Norfolk State, Youngstown State, Ohio, Western Michigan, and UMass. Like that's kind of it, it's embarrassing. And like the Big Ten's like, say, well, there's a big difference between doing it now and doing it later in the year. I go, yeah, there is. The SEC is using it to their advantage. They're making the schedules. You don't think that Ryan Day and James Franklin and Sharon Moore or whoever else, and Dan Lanning, they wouldn't love playing one of these games the week before they play their biggest couple of games of the year to kind of give their teams a chance to breathe and reset and have a little bit of, okay, we'll rest some guys and get them healthy. That's what the SEC does in November is actually, I mean, the games are going to happen regardless of when they're going to happen. Financially for these non-Power 4 schools, it supports their athletic department. You're going to have the non-conference game. So if they're going to happen, why not schedule them to your benefit? So again, people did not agree with that take. I know you're shocked at that, but it is interesting to remember this week when come November 14th or 16th or whatever that weekend is when all these non-conference games are being played.
All right, a game I'm really interested in, Clemson, Georgia Tech. Clemson didn't look very good last week against Troy. They did survive. Sammy P, what do you think of this matchup?
Oh, well, maybe Bear was right about Clemson. That's where I want to start. I also, though, Bear, I don't think I would bet this game with your money. So it's a big, fat pass for me. A lot of respected guys I know on the dog. They got better numbers, but that's a big push on the Jackets.
And it's interesting because we talked about this earlier in the week on Bear Bets too. Like when this number came down, usually like with the Georgia-Tennessee game, there was a ton of money on the Vols. Came down to 3.5, and you got the buyback 3.5, 4.5 in some spots. There was never any buyback on this game. It hit the 3.5, and it just went to 3. Like that, as someone who was looking to bet Clemson in this game, the fact that it went to 3 and there was no resistance, like that would concern me. And we know in these games, Brent Pry and Georgia Tech, Brent Pry. Got my text confused with Brent's and Keys and Prize, but Brett Keys been really good in spots like this. 10 games against ranked opponents at Georgia Tech, 8-2 against the number, 3-0 against the number at home. So get the Jackets up, and hopefully they have a healthy Haynes King this week to potentially pull the upset. Bruce, has there been any buzz or word on Antonio Williams' availability in this one?
The hamstring's been shaky. I think that maybe a little while before he's close to 100%. And that's a concern because when I talked to coaches who played them this week, they were like, they don't feel like they have a ton of speed out there. Wesco is a big athletic receiver, but the other thing is their offensive line is really, really shaky in the interior. That's been a big concern. Georgia Tech is physical up front. That could be a bad matchup for the Tigers too.
And there are a bunch of bad matchups this week for a lot of big names in college football. Oklahoma, mother of all like sandwich games. Oklahoma playing at Temple the week after that win against Michigan last week. They have Auburn next week. Auburn has South Alabama before they go to Norman. Missouri, the big win over KU last week. Next week they have South Carolina. They got Western UL Lafayette this week. Western Michigan is an opponent for Illinois in between the Duke game and the Big Ten opener at Indiana. So a lot of options, a lot of potential this week for some big favorites to maybe just kind of sleepwalk through some games. So appreciate everyone out there, as always, for rating, reviewing, subscribing, and getting your podcasts wherever you get them. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel as well. Thanks to DraftKings, as always. Remember, bless you bet, or you lose when you win.